There's over $1 trillion of waste in supply chains today.
The net zero carbon emission is something that corporates are taking very seriously.
To meet these objectives, they're going to have to take into consideration CO2 emissions.
Hey, and welcome back to Net Zero Carbon. I'm Tyler Cole, your host, and this is the show at FreightWaves where we deep dive on decarbonization with a lens on freight, fuel, and energy. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by Barrett Young, Chief Marketing Officer of Netradyne. Barrett, how are you?
I'm doing great, Tyler. How are you?
I'm really happy to have you on. It's nice to meet you. I look forward to learning more about you and Netradyne, which is probably the best place to start. Can we get a bit of a background on Barrett? What's your story? How did you get to where you are, and what does Netradyne do?
Absolutely. I was introduced to sort of the commercial vehicle industry about 7-8 years ago. And it was one of those situations where I was, interviewing for a new job, and I kind of looked at this market opportunity and realized that the commercial vehicle industry had been sorely underserved with advancements in new technology for decades. And that got me really excited. And I realized that there's an area of contribution that I can apply here where I can help, elevate this industry to truly perform even better than it already does. And, an industry that's arguably the backbone of America. So I've been in the industry for a little while, not nearly as long as a lot of other people, but I do know a lot so far. And over my course of time there, I have run marketing organizations all the way up to where I am now within Netradyne. And Netradyne has a really interesting story because there are other technology providers that have been producing technology for years. And Netradyne's been around since about 2015, but they waited a little bit longer than most to bring their first product to market. And the reason being is, instead of just creating a product or a service that does the basics, they wanted to truly create something that made a difference. And that was actually more advanced than anything else in the market. And the reason why it took so long is that it wasn't just taking existing technology and putting it into a nice little stack and handing it out to the industry. They literally created new technology that never existed before. So with that, Netradyne is actually the first technology company to combine artificial intelligence and video telematics together. And therefore now we have AI layered into video recording. So this whole big push on AI dash cams was actually originally driven out by what Netradyne brought to market. And so with that, over the course of, since 2015, Netradyne has developed the most advanced, sophisticated AI dash camera system. And really, we don't even like to use the term dash cam, but it's so much more than that. It's a complete safety solution, ranging from, yes, the video telematics of the camera itself, all the way to the back office workflows to address and proactively improve driver performance and behavior through real-time in-cab coaching to virtual coaching and a whole slew of other solutions just to improve overall fleet performance.
Barrett, what an interesting backstory for you and the company as well. I love hearing about something that is new and innovative. And now you guys not only have introduced it to the market, but you're seeing adoption and starting to introduce other solutions that build on top of that, call it core functionality maybe. Can you talk a little bit about how just the general direction of Netradyne when it came in and introduced AI as a fleet telematics solution? Was there an unexpected kind of market adoption where customers came and started using it and said, well, how could we add this? Or what's another solution that we could layer onto it?
Yes. So there's always this sort of aha moment. So let me start this off with a quick statement. The way that we've been taught to improve driver behavior and fleet performance is perfectly suited for a world that no longer exists. And what I mean by that is, if you think about it, is that traditional sort of safety solutions really were posed at exoneration. Let's, prove that the truck wasn't at fault, right? And of course, most of the time that's the case. Now, the technology has evolved to a point where we can actually prevent accidents before they happen. And by having the technology read and analyze, do all the algorithms that the artificial intelligence does and learn from it over time, then fleets, once they install the software and they start using it and they're adding in, in-cab coaching and adding into all the other features that we offer, they then go, oh my goodness, I've now seen a material difference in my driver behavior, my driver scores. I've actually already received reductions in my insurance and a handful of other things. Even Amazon, one of our largest clients, has already openly stated they've seen a 50% reduction in accidents. And ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. That's our ultimate goal: is let's improve safety on the road so that everyone goes home safely to their families at night. That's
really cool. And you kind of front ran another question that I was about to offer. It's, who is a typical fleet customer that you guys are working with, and is there a appropriate size for fleets to get involved, or does this range from small commercial vehicles all the way up to Class 8 long haul? Where's the sweet spot? Yeah, so we actually cater to all vehicle types. So we, as I mentioned, Amazon's one of our biggest customers. They work for their middle mile and last mile vehicles. We also have a large section of long haul trucking. We also do construction. We also do school buses. First Student is a big school bus provider that we work with. Oil and gas customers. So really it kind of runs the gamut of all different vehicle types. And there's multiple use cases across all, but including the ability to add external cameras and things like that for sort of that 360 view around the vehicle. In terms of fleet sizes, again, we work with all fleet sizes. The system is capable. We enterprise customers really, really enjoy it. So I will say, if there is a sweet spot, that the larger fleets really begin to have the capability to exercise the full capability of the system. Smaller fleets may not need everything that we offer, but we certainly can service everyone. Excellent. And how do drivers feel about it? There's always a big pushback in the industry from being watched, and the force of telematics, even before video, into all cabs was a big deal for drivers and feeling tracked. But what did the drivers say about it? Are they realizing some of the same benefits as well? Yes. So going back to the statement I said about how the world's sort of changed and the way we used to do things is different. Traditional dash cams, drivers hated, and I'm not going to say that they all of a sudden like them today, but the use case is slightly different. They're there for exoneration. They're there to catch the driver doing something wrong, and because the use of, or the reason why we have safety systems now is evolving, drivers will certainly be resistant at first. Totally understandable. But the moment they start realizing how it's improved their behavior, or the moment that they go, wow, I almost got an accident, but I got that alert that prevented me from doing so, they then have also their own aha moments where they go, wow, this is incredible. Okay, now I get it. Thank you. Well, and especially if it's a company that rewards drivers appropriately, right, and takes care of and invests in their development. If you have improved data, you're now able to better manage, and hopefully drivers are realizing a lot of those benefits when they are improving their safety records and improving their efficiency, which I'm sure we'll talk about some of the different solutions that fleets can track and actually start to implement solutions. But that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, and that you actually staged that really well for myself. So one of the big things that Netradyne does, and one of the true differentiators, is we're the only solution that can actually recognize and reward positive driving. So if you think about it, 80 to 90% of the driving day is all good compliant driving. They're stopping at stop signs, they're maintaining good following distance, speeding limits, and things like that. Every once in a while, something happens. There are lots of outside obstacles that drivers face throughout the day. And that's where we sort of alert drivers to watch out, be careful, and things like that. But typically, they do the conversation with a safety director or a fleet manager is, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong. And as a driver, you're like, man, I feel like I'm a good driver, but I'm constantly being told everything I do wrong. My hands being slapped every time I go into the office. And now you can flip the script. Flip the script and say, listen, we've seen everything you've done great. Thank you for continuing to maintain those great speeds and following distances. You're doing a great job. Be careful of these two things. We'll do a coaching video on that. But by doing so, you're actually improving the relationship with the driver and the fleet manager. And overall, positive recognition reinforces good behavior. Same thing when I load the dishwasher for my wife. She's like, hey, honey, I really love that you did that. I'm like, all right, I like the positive recognition. I'll do that more. Same concept. It actually is improved, or scientifically proved, that you can improve behavior over time by recognizing the good versus always punishing the bad. So true. And you're already front running me a little bit talking about at-home uses, because my daughter's 13 and I'm like, when can I get this in the cab for her to help her learn how to drive? We get this question all the time. Hopefully soon, because my kids are growing up, and I would love to have that too. Absolutely, it'd be a great solution. I'm curious, just user experience wise, as a driver, is everything tracked and kind of retroactively looked back based on learning, or are there in-cab alerts, opportunities with like maybe not necessarily heads-up display, but what is the driver's experience like while they're driving in the cab with this technology?
Yeah, so the camera itself is not very large. It's got a fairly small footprint into the windshield. So it's not like they have this massive camera lens just staring at them. And oftentimes, drivers forget that it's there. But the actual experience that drivers experience most often is really the in-cab alerts. What Netradyne does, and you're the only one in the industry to do so, is we actually process all the artificial intelligence on what we call the edge. And that it just means that it's processing directly on the hardware device itself versus having to be sent up to the cloud, manually reviewed by somebody and sent back down. So what that means for the driver experience is that if they're following too close and looking at their cell phone, both obviously very risky behaviors, then our system can alert them in real time in that moment within milliseconds. Say, hey, please put down your phone, create space in front of the vehicle in front of you to reduce the chances of an accident. Where other systems may take, they'll get the alert only after the fact that the accident actually happens because it took that long for the process and sent it back to the cloud, et cetera, et cetera. So the drivers very quickly begin to see the benefits for them as they oftentimes don't realize that they have risky driving behavior. Admittedly, myself, if I get a text message, I might accidentally look at my phone as I'm driving down the road. But what this does, in the case of some let's say a last mile delivery van, if they're driving through our neighborhoods where our kids are playing and a ball goes out in the street, you want them paying attention to the road, not looking at their Facebook account. Exactly. So, and that's exactly what our system does, is allows it to, in real time, help what we call micro coaching. We actually call our in-cab alerts almost micro coaching because it coaches them repetitively if they continue to do it over time. Like, hey, please pay attention to this or watch out for that. And they realize over time that they're actually having these risky behaviors. And after a while, that goes away. And then they are always paying attention. They're driving safe. And the great thing about that, then, as they drive safer, we have a proprietary driver scoring color. It's called Green Zone Score. As that Green Zone Score goes up, then most fleets actually build incentive programs around that. And as you reach a certain threshold, let's say 850 out of 1,000, then you qualify for a monthly or quarterly bonus of some sort. And so driving safe actually pays in this situation. So a lot of drivers begin to benefit that way too.
That's probably going to be the title of the episode. I'm going to steal that. Nice job. Can you talk about some other components of that score? Is everything safety, or is there, this is a carbon related show, is there some sort of fuel efficiency scoring that we can also do for driving behavior as well?
So we are in the process right now and getting very close, let's say, quote unquote, in the coming weeks, of releasing a very large announcement that is going to marry the Netradyne system with one of the most powerful fleet management systems really on the planet, we'll say, but definitely within the United States. And in doing so, we'll be able to take even more data points to help funnel into things like our driver scoring card. But more importantly is it sends all this data in between these two systems and allows fleets to make very educated decisions on one, the fleet performance, the driver performance, and then dive into specific elements like fuel efficiencies and route optimization, things like that. But very, very soon.
Oh, we're definitely going to have you back on to dive through that one's near and dear to my heart. And though it shouldn't be, because I tell people all the time, it's so easy to focus on carbon. It's almost low hanging fruit, even though it's invisible and nobody knows how to quantify it. Exactly right. It is something that draws our attention because when we talk about the realities of climate change and the impacts we're seeing, like that's what gets all the buzz and all the headline news. And we often overlook, or at least don't properly acknowledge, the role of people in this. And when we're talking about fleets specifically, if we take the focus off burning diesel for a minute and focus on our people, there's a lot of conversation that needs to be had around how we treat our drivers, how we work together, how we improve safety. And that's where companies like Netradyne can come in and make a really, really big impact for a lot of these firms.
Yeah, absolutely. And collectively, where Netradyne sits as a company is that what we are hearing is that in the status today is everyone kind of still figuring this out. What are they able to do? Where it fits in with their business model and honestly what benefits for them as well. We would be naive to think that everyone's going to go out and save the world and expect completely nothing in return. So, if we could save some money along the way as a business, that's always work. That's always going to be something we work on. So I think what it is from Netradyne's perspective is we want to be able to provide enough data and insights into what is actually happening with the drivers. And obviously that then connects to how the fleet or the vehicle itself is performing. So as a company, we provide as much information as possible into the driver performance. So then the fleet manager, the safety director, and the drivers themselves work collectively together to say, we think we can improve our sustainability efforts by doing X, Y, and Z. But you have to get to the point to even know what X, Y, and Z is before you can actually put a plan together. And I think that's really where Netradyne system and the telematics collective really comes in, providing the data to build an action plan.
Yeah, it's a step change for people when you have that sort of granularity at your fingers at real time at a vehicle and driver level. That's massive. Before you couldn't even manage it because you don't know how to measure. So I love that you mentioned that. Another thing that I think companies are trying to do more and more is tell their story, right? We want in our CSR reports or ESG reports, we want obviously the requirements, the anti-corruption, the greenhouse gas inventories, all the things that you got to like check the box and make sure you're doing to report on. But the people is what you read about, and the drivers in all fleet situations are the most important people in many cases in their company. How are companies working on telling their story, if at all, around safety? Meaning, we have standards and we have certifications for a lot of these other areas of a company's ESG journey, but is there a standard safety certification that companies are trying to like implement, and maybe Netradyne's data could help them pursue some of those things?
Yeah. So one of the things that Netradyne is actually working on is actually creating part of that certification. It would be great that in the years to come that you can be green zone certified, meaning that the driver scoring that we go through and maintaining a certain score and above is actually almost like a credit score that follows the driver wherever they go. And so as a job application, they can say, oh, I have the green zone score of 1,002. It's a great, I had, a grade of A+ in high school type thing, or I've got a great credit score. And what that score will mean is when a fleet begins to adopt or hire new drivers, they know that every single element of what the fleet's trying to do is, if it's ESG, sustainability efforts, if it's cost saving efforts, if it's vehicle performance and maintenance efforts, they will know that the person at the helm of that vehicle is contributing to the overall goal by hiring someone they know has a certain certification or score. For example, if I were to go to Keith Wilson, who's the CEO of Titan Freight, one of our customers, yeah, he's a great guy. And I said, hey, Keith, if I could pinpoint the top 10% of the fleet that wastes over 50% of the fuel each month for your fleet, and then also pinpoint or to tell you the top 3 drivers contributing to that behavior, and I can actually help identify a way for you to correct it and save you hundreds of thousands of fuel costs by addressing the driver behavior and the elements that they do when they're on the road of hard accelerations, hard brakes, idle time, whatever it may be. And then on top of that, you can save a bunch of money and make the world a better place for your kids and your kids' kids. Would you be interested? Of course, he's going to say yes. Now, Keith's going to say yes regardless. He's a huge advocate for this area anyway. But any CEO of fleet is going to go, yes, I like that idea. Let's talk more. And it all begins to interconnect.
You're right. It's totally related. And when you phrase it like that, there's nobody that should say no. I think there's a lot of companies who would probably look and say, we're doing some of this already, right? We've got our CSA rating with DOT. We're having to report a lot of this today. But the difference between being able to proactively manage it, coach on it, have real-time alerts, and be able to tie it in, hopefully soon, with a lot of other integrations to be able to harvest even more information is the big differentiator versus a backward-looking aggregate score. This is very similar to what we see in greenhouse gas emissions accounting, by the way. I don't know if you've thought about that parallel, but typically you're like annual activity data, you're multiplying it by averages, and you're reporting the best you can with the data that you have. And the trick to improving that and making positive change and impact is having the data available now.
Yes. And I'll even add to that is not only having the data, but understanding what the data is saying. Because I can get spreadsheets upon spreadsheets upon spreadsheets, and if I don't know what the data is actually saying, then I can't build an action plan. And so Netradyne has actually thought of that as well. We're not expecting to all of the fleet owners and safety directors to use our system to be data scientists. So we actually have created what we call our safety manager assistant, which is essentially the generative AI tool that's inside of our platform that does all that work for you. You don't have to sit there and stare at, all the different reports that we have. You can even just type it in. Hey, what is the most optimized way to deliver this cargo? Should I go this route, this route? What driver has the best score? Which driver is safe for driving in this weather condition, et cetera, et cetera. And it will spit out, well, based off this information, blah, 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 blah. So it's actually pretty powerful. It's very cool. But it does the hard work for the fleet manager. Instead of having to comb through dash cam videos and driver scores, you just ask it a question and it helps you figure out all the answers.
Yeah, AI, and that's what AI is here for, right? To help us double insights through all of this reams and reams of data. That is so fascinating. Is there anything else that I haven't asked you that we should talk about with Netradyne and the way that it impacts companies' ESG ratings?
I think, beyond driver behavior and driver coaching, that's going to be a huge thing. It affects everything, down the funnel of fuel consumption, and obviously accidents on the road. When we see fuel haulers are probably the most at risk. You have to be a little crazy to be a fuel hauler, but they're all really awesome people. But safety there is paramount. The moment there's an accident with a fuel hauler, not only is it an accident with, bad for the road and the safety of the people, but then the risk of fuel then now leaking into the ground, into a water system, something like that. That's obviously very, never a good situation. So, really, we're looking at it by vehicle type, by the type of driver profiles they have, and we're addressing it all sort of in real time like this. So, again, going back to the fact that all the technology is integrated and it tells a broader story, and making sure we have enough the data to then take and build an action plan based on what they need to do.
Really fascinating. I've enjoyed so much this conversation and learned a lot that I didn't know before, but I'm glad that there are solutions out there like Netradyne that are making these improvements happen. But I got to ask you, Garrett, everybody that comes on the show gets this last question. Why does it matter to you, Barrett Young? Why does sustainability or a sustainability focus matter in your day-to-day job?
Yeah. I think we have a window of opportunity where we can truly make a meaningful change into the future success of this world, as crazy as that sounds. I want my kids' kids to have a great world. And if nothing else, there's one thing my mom said a lot of really great things, but one thing that really stuck with me, that over the course of time of being successful, affect change. Find a way to make the world a better place before you left it. And that stuck with me for a long time. And if that means that I can come to a company that truly has developed technology that actually can save lives and make the world a better place, and part of that change is happening now.
That's really encouraging. And your mother sounds like a great woman. I've heard similar stories in my family and glad that we can carry that forward and drive change in an industry that needs us to, right? So thank you for the work you're doing at Netradyne. We appreciate it. And once there are some major announcements coming out in the coming weeks, we definitely want to have you back on and learn about what's next.
Definitely.
Thanks, Barrett.
There is over $1 trillion of waste in supply chains today.
The net zero carbon emission is something that corporates are taking very seriously.
To meet these objectives, they're going to have to take into consideration CO2 emissions.